Marie Osmond. She was America's sweetheart, the smiling face everyone thought had it all. But behind the bright lights, Marie Osmond was silently drowning. From childhood pressures that stole her innocence to eating disorders, heartbreak, depression, and the unimaginable loss of her own child. In this video, you'll discover the real story Hollywood never told you. We'll take you from her grueling childhood in the spotlight to the hidden struggles she fought while the world cheered, to the love she lost and found again, and the heartbreaking family tragedies that shaped the woman she is today. You'll see rare moments from her early years, hear about the shocking decision that left her children out of her will, and witness how she turned pain into purpose, becoming a voice for hope, mental health, and resilience. Stay with us until the end, because Marie's journey isn't just a celebrity story. It's a masterclass in survival, faith, and finding joy after the storm. This is the Marie Osmond you've never met, and once you hear her story, you'll never look at her the same way again. Marie Osmond's story begins on October 13, 1959, in Ogden, Utah. The only daughter among 9 children in the famous Osmond family. In a house filled with music, rehearsals, and ambition, Marie's life would never be ordinary. From the time she was just 3 years old, she was thrust into the spotlight, joining her brothers in rehearsals, recordings, and television appearances. Childhood games and carefree afternoons were replaced with dance lessons, vocal training, and relentless schedules that demanded precision and discipline. Her parents, George and Olive Osmond, loved their children fiercely, but held them to impossibly high standards. Every note sung, every step danced, every public appearance had to be perfect. For Marie, there was little room for mistakes, and even less for simply being a child. And then, at just 11 years old, came a brush with death that would stay with her forever. While on a family vacation in Hawaii, she was caught in a dangerous current while swimming in the ocean. The water pulled her farther and farther from shore, and into shark-infested waters. Panic set in as she fought to keep her head above the waves. By sheer luck and the quick action of rescuers, she survived. But the fear, the feeling of helplessness, and the knowledge of how close she came to dying would remain etched in her memory. This was the backdrop of her early life, a mix of glittering success and quiet trauma, applause and isolation. On stage, she was America's sweetheart, the smiling little sister with the perfect voice and perfect manners. Offstage, she was a young girl learning to survive in a world where the show could never stop, no matter how tired, scared, or lonely she felt. It was the beginning of a journey that would shape not only her career, but the way she saw herself and the world for decades to come. By the time Marie Osmond was a teenager, she was no longer just the little sister in the background. At 15, she and her brother Donny were given their own weekly variety program, The Donny and Marie Show. Overnight, Marie became a household name, her face appearing on television screens across America every Friday night. But the fame came with a price. Behind the laughter, duets, and colorful costumes was an unrelenting pressure to look a certain way. Producers and network executives scrutinized her appearance with cold precision. And at just under 100 pounds, she was told she still needed to lose weight. One comment from a producer cut especially deep. "You're too fat for television." She was a child, still learning who she was. But now she was being told that her worth was measured in inches and pounds. Desperate to meet expectations, Marie began severely restricting her diet. What started as skipping meals spiraled into full-blown anorexia and later bulimia. Every calorie became a threat, every mirror a reminder that she was never enough. Adding to the silent torment were deeper wounds, private traumas from her childhood, including abuse she would not speak about publicly until decades later. Those scars, combined with the endless cycle of dieting, purging, and self-criticism, began to erode her sense of self-worth. Still, each week, she stepped onto the stage, smiling, singing, and dancing as if nothing was wrong. The audience saw a radiant young star, never suspecting that off-camera she was battling both the pressure of fame and the war within her own body. The camera lights were bright, but Marie's world was growing darker. And as the years went on, the need to appear perfect would become both her armor and her prison. For Marie Osmond, perfection wasn't just a goal, it was the only acceptable state of being. Years of performing under microscopic scrutiny had taught her that mistakes weren't allowed and emotions were better hidden than expressed. The applause of millions became her validation, yet it was fleeting. When the curtain fell and the cameras turned off, silence crept in. A silence filled with questions she didn't dare voice. Am I loved for who I am, or only for what I can do? Marie had learned early that vulnerability wasn't safe. Her family's public image had to be spyless. Struggles, pain, and doubts were to be buried deep beneath a polished smile. In interviews, she radiated warmth and charm. In private, she wrestled with a constant, exhausting inner critic. That critic measured her worth in flawless performances, perfect family appearances, and unwavering positivity. Anything less felt like failure. She became an expert at compartmentalizing her feelings, shelving heartbreak, fear, and exhaustion so she could present the version of Marie the world expected to see. But emotional suppression comes with a cost. Over time, the weight of pretending chipped away at her spirit. Every day was an act, not just on stage, but in life. The world's in the public eye, Marie Osmond's life seemed like a fairy tale. Fame, beauty, talent, and a warm smile that could light up a room. But behind the scenes, her search for love was far more complicated. As a young woman, she was linked to several well-known names, brief romances with celebrities that made tabloid headlines, but often fizzled just as quickly as they began. The demands of her career, combined with her deeply ingrained need to appear perfect, made it hard for relationships to grow beyond the surface. In 1982, at just 22 years old, Marie married basketball player Steve Craig. The wedding was a dazzling media event, but the reality of married life was less glamorous. Only 3 years later, the couple divorced. A painful and public split that left Marie questioning her choices and her ability to sustain love. A year later, she married music producer Brian Blosel. For over 2 decades, they built a large family together, raising 8 children, both biological and adopted. To the outside world, they seemed solid. But inside the marriage, Marie faced ongoing challenges, from differing personalities to the strain of balancing motherhood, career, and her own unspoken struggles with self-worth. In 2007, that chapter ended too. The divorce was another blow, leaving her once again a single mother, this time with the added responsibility of guiding her children through the fallout. Through it all, Marie kept her heartbreak largely private. On stage and in interviews, she maintained her composure, speaking of family and faith. But in quiet moments, she carried the grief of dreams that hadn't turned out the way she imagined, and the hope that one day, love would find her again. In 1999, Marie Osmond welcomed her 7th child into the world. By all appearances, life was full. A thriving career, a large family, and the kind of public admiration most could only dream of. But behind closed doors, Marie was facing something she could never have anticipated. Almost immediately after the birth, she began to feel an unfamiliar heaviness. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was a deep, gnawing sadness, a loss of interest in things she had once loved, and an unsettling disconnection from the joy she thought she should be feeling. For someone who had spent her entire life pushing through pain and smiling for the cameras, this was foreign territory. Marie didn't recognize herself, and worse, she feared her family wouldn't either. Then came the official diagnosis: severe postpartum depression. At the time, postpartum depression wasn't a conversation many people were having, especially not in the public eye. Mothers were expected to simply be happy and love every moment, but Marie's reality was far from that picture-perfect expectation. She described feeling like she was trapped in a fog, unable to climb out. The lowest point came when she quietly left her home for several days. She didn't do it to run away from her responsibilities. She did it because she truly believed her children would be better off without her. For a woman who had devoted her life to being a mother, it was a thought that cut her to the core. In the years that followed, whispers and rumors swirled. In 2006, tabloids claimed she had attempted suicide, something she firmly denied. But rather than hiding from her truth, Marie chose to face it head-on. She went public with her story, opening up about her postpartum depression in interviews, books, and national talk shows. She spoke of the crushing weight, the hopelessness, and the dangerous silence that keeps so many women from seeking help. Her message was clear. Mental illness doesn't care who you are, how famous you are, or how much you love your family. It can happen to anyone. Her honesty gave permission for thousands of other women to speak up, to seek treatment, and to let go of the shame. In doing so, Marie didn't just heal a part of herself. She changed the conversation around maternal mental health. But just as she was finding her footing again, life would deliver a blow far more devastating than she could have imagined. A tragedy no parent should ever have to endure. February 26, 2010, a date forever etched into Marie Osmond's heart. Her 18-year-old son, Michael, was found dead after jumping from the balcony of his Los Angeles apartment. The cause was suicide. Michael had been a bright, sensitive young man, adopted as a baby, raised in a loving home, and deeply cherished by his mother. But behind his quiet smile, he carried a heavy burden. He struggled with depression for years, made worse by relentless bullying over his appearance and personal challenges. Marie later revealed that her son had reached out to her the night before he died. They exchanged messages. She told him she loved him. She believed in that moment he would be okay. Hours later, he was gone. The news shattered her. She had survived the pressures of fame, 2 divorces, and very public struggles. But nothing could have prepared her for this. As she put it, there's no handbook for losing a child. In the weeks after Michael's death, Marie's grief was raw and all-consuming. She canceled performances, retreated from public life, and surrounded herself with family. Yet even in her darkest hours, she found the strength to speak out, not just for her son, but for the countless families facing the same pain. She began openly addressing the dangers of bullying, the reality of youth suicide, and the urgent need for mental health awareness. She partnered with organizations to support prevention programs, using her platform to amplify a message she wished Michael could have heard. You are never alone, and your life matters. Still, advocacy did not erase the pain. Behind her renewed public purpose was a mother whose heart would never be whole again. She admitted that some days the grief felt like it might swallow her. Yet she chose to keep going, to honor Michael by helping others, to turn her private heartbreak into a public mission of hope. It was a defining moment in Marie's life, the kind of loss that changes a person forever. And while the world still saw her smile, those who looked closely could see the shadow in her eyes. In the years that followed, she would face even more family losses, but each one, in its own way, would deepen her resilience. Loss had already touched Marie Osmond's life in ways most people never experience, but as the years went on, it seemed to come for her family again and again, each time leaving a new scar, each time testing the limits of her strength. In 2004, she said goodbye to her father, George Osmond, the man who had been the steady anchor in a sea of show business chaos. He had been her guide, her disciplinarian, and her biggest believer. Losing him felt like losing the roots that had kept her grounded through decades in the public eye. Just 3 years later, in 2007, Marie lost her mother, Olive, a woman whose influence had shaped nearly every aspect of her life. Olive had been both fiercely protective and relentlessly demanding, a force of nature who believed in hard work and family unity. When she passed, it felt like the heart of the Osmond family had gone with her. Marie often said that after her mother died, the family dynamic shifted. Gatherings felt different. The laughter didn't echo quite the same way. The pain didn't stop there. In 2018, tragedy struck again when Marie lost a grandchild. She has rarely spoken publicly about it, protecting her family's privacy. But those close to her know it was another deep wound, the kind of loss that reopens every past grief and reminds you just how fragile life is. Then, in 2022, her daughter Brianna's husband passed away unexpectedly. As a mother, Marie had always tried to shield her children from pain. But here was a heartbreak she couldn't fix, a loss she couldn't take away. Instead, she had to watch her daughter walk through the same valley of grief she had known all too well. And all she could do was be there, holding space for her pain. In the midst of all this, her brothers, the same ones she had grown up performing with on stage, faced their own health battles. Her brother Verl suffered a debilitating stroke, changing his life and mobility forever. And then in 2025, the Osmond family faced yet another blow, the death of her brother Wayne. He had been not only her for Marie, the only way forward was through love, loving the family she still had, cherishing every moment, and honoring the ones she had lost by living a life filled with purpose. And in the middle of all this loss, something unexpected happened. A reconnection with someone from her past that would remind her love can come around twice in a lifetime. By 2011, Marie Osmond had lived a lifetime's worth of love, loss, and lessons. She had weathered 2 divorces, raised 8 children, and endured heartaches that most people could never imagine. She wasn't looking for a grand romance, certainly not one splashed across tabloids. What she longed for was something simpler: peace, stability, and the comfort of someone who truly knew her. And then, life brought her full circle. Nearly 3 decades after their divorce, Marie reconnected with her first husband, Steve Craig. Theirs had been a young love once, bright, passionate, but pressured by the demands of fame and the public eye. In 1985, they had gone their separate ways, each believing that chapter was closed for good. But with the passing of years came perspective. They had both grown, both changed, and perhaps most importantly, they both understood the value of second chances. Their reconnection wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow, deliberate, and built on a foundation of shared history. They knew each other's strengths, quirks, and flaws. There was no need for pretenses. This time, it wasn't about dazzling the world. It was about building a safe space for each other. When they decided to remarry in May 2011, Marie chose the date with great care. It wasn't just a wedding day. It was a day layered with meaning. She picked the same date that had been deeply significant in her family, one connected to both her late mother and her late son, Michael. In doing so, she wove memory into celebration, creating a bridge between her past and her future. The wedding itself was quiet, intimate, a far cry from the glittering spectacle of their first. Surrounded by family, Marie walked into this new chapter not as the wide-eyed 22-year-old she once was, but as a woman who had been tested, who had lost and loved deeply, and who understood that true partnership is less about perfection and more about presence. With Steve, she found the steady companionship she had been craving. Someone who didn't need her to be Marie Osmond the star, but simply Marie, the woman, the mother, the grandmother. It wasn't the love story she had planned, but it became the one she cherished. Proof that sometimes the heart really does know its way home. In 2020, Marie Osmond made a statement that sent shockwaves through entertainment headlines and even stirred debates in living rooms across America. Sitting on an estimated fortune of around $20 million, she announced that she would not be leaving her wealth to her children. Her reasoning was clear, though far from universally accepted. She believed that giving children unearned money could rob them of ambition and purpose. In her words, "You take away the one most important gift you can give your children, the ability to work." This wasn't a decision born from bitterness or estrangement. By all accounts, Marie is deeply devoted to her children and grandchildren. But she had seen too many examples, in and out of Hollywood, where inherited wealth became more of a curse than a blessing. She wanted her kids to find their own paths, to feel the pride of building something from the ground up, just as she had. It's worth remembering, Marie's own life was built on hard work from the very start. She was on stage at 3 years old, performing alongside her brothers, learning that success didn't come without sacrifice. She often said that the work ethic instilled in her during those grueling early years was the very thing that carried her through life's hardest storms. Still, the announcement drew mixed reactions. Some praised her for instilling independence and responsibility, applauding her belief that wealth should be earned, not handed down. Others criticized the choice, arguing that she could pass on her fortune while still encouraging her children to work, or that it risked creating tension in the family. Marie, however, stood firm. Her stance wasn't just about money, it was about values. She wanted her children to know that their identity and self-worth could never be tied to her bank account. And in her mind, the greatest inheritance she could give them wasn't financial. It was resilience, integrity, and the ability to create their own legacy. In the end, it was a decision rooted in love, even if it wasn't universally understood. And for Marie, it was one more example of living life on her own terms, guided by her convictions, not by public opinion. As she moved into her mid-60s, this philosophy shaped not only how she approached her wealth, but how she approached the rest of her life. At 65, Marie Osmond stands as a woman who has lived not one life, but many. Child star, television icon, loving mother, advocate, survivor. And now, perhaps her favorite role of all, grandmother. These days, home for Marie is Utah, a place of grounding, away from the relentless pace of Hollywood. It's where she can wake up without a makeup call, enjoy mornings in the kitchen with her grandchildren, and watch sunsets without wondering about camera angles. In a career defined by performance and public scrutiny, this quiet chapter is one she treasures. She still performs, not out of financial need, but because music remains her truest passion. The stage is no longer a place she feels pressured to prove herself. Instead, it's where she connects heart to heart with people who have followed her journey for decades. When she sings, there's no facade, just a woman sharing the emotions of a lifetime. But there is one presence always with her, even in moments of joy: the memory of her son, Michael. More than a decade has passed since his death, yet his absence is woven into her days. She honors him not just in words, but in action, continuing to speak out for mental health awareness, advocating for kindness, and supporting causes that fight bullying and despair. For Marie, every time she offers hope to someone in pain, it's a way of keeping Michael's light alive. Her life now is guided by priorities that fame could never define: faith, family, health, and service. She remains committed to her health, both physically and emotionally, embracing fitness, mindful eating, and spiritual grounding. Her faith has been her anchor, the constant that steadied her through every loss, every heartbreak, every reinvention. In her family, she's not just Marie Osmond, the celebrity. She's Grandma, the woman who bakes cookies, tells bedtime stories, and cheers from the stands at soccer games. And perhaps that's the truest measure of her legacy, that she is fully present for the people who matter most, without letting the weight of her public life overshadow her private love. Looking back, her story is not just about fame and success. It's about endurance. She has navigated decades of public and private hardship with a rare combination of grace and grit. Through childhood pressures, body image battles, heartbreak, depression, unimaginable loss, and relentless media scrutiny, she has remained at her core a believer in faith, in family, and in the power of hope. And as she looks forward, she's not done. Marie often says her story is still being written. Whether on stage, in charity work, or in the quiet of her Utah home, she continues to live with purpose, proof that resilience isn't just about surviving. but about finding beauty in life after the storms. For those who followed her journey, from that little girl on stage at 3 years old to the woman she is today, Marie's enduring legacy is clear. She is living testimony that no matter what life takes from you, it can never take away your ability to rise again with faith in your heart, love in your hands, and a smile that still shines after all these years. Marie Osmond's story reminds us that behind every public smile is a private journey, one of courage, faith, and resilience. If her life has inspired you, please take a moment to share this video so her message of hope can reach someone who needs it today. And if you want more untold stories of remarkable lives, be sure to like, subscribe, and join our community. Your support helps us keep bringing you the stories that matter, stories that prove it's never too late to rise again.